The kingdom of Ashvale was ruled by a king who never smiled. Alpha King Draven Cross was strong, fair, and respected by everyone who served under him. But there was one thing about him that no one dared to speak of. A long scar ran down his left side, from his collarbone to his hip. It was old, pale, and jagged, like lightning frozen in his skin. No one knew the full story behind it, and no one was brave enough to ask. The palace healers feared it the most. Every healer who had ever treated the king avoided looking at the scar. If they had to clean a wound near it, their hands would shake. If they had to speak to him during treatment, their voices would grow soft and careful, as if one wrong word might bring his anger down on them. Over the years, healer after healer left the palace, some by choice, some because the king dismissed them for reasons no one explained. Elara Voss did not know any of this when she arrived at the palace gates. She was young, calm, and confident in her skills. She had trained for years in the art of healing, learning how to mend broken bones, treat deep wounds, and calm frightened patients. She had heard that the Alpha King's palace needed a new healer, and she had come to take the position without hesitation. On her first day, an older servant named Mira showed her around the palace halls. Mira was kind but nervous, glancing over her shoulder often as she spoke. "You must remember one thing," Mira said quietly. "Never speak about the king's scar. Never look at it too long. If he asks you to treat him, do your work quickly and quietly. Do not ask questions." Elara tilted her head. "Why not?" Mira lowered her voice even further. The last healer who looked at it too closely was sent away that same night. No one knows what she said or did wrong. Some say she gasped when she saw it. Others say she asked him how he got it. Either way, she was gone by morning, and we never spoke of her again. Elara nodded, though she did not feel afraid. She had faced difficult patients before, people in pain who lashed out because they hurt inside and outside both. She believed a scar was just a scar, no matter who carried it. Weeks passed, and Elara settled into her new life at the palace. She treated soldiers who returned from patrols, servants who twisted their ankles on the stone steps, and children who scraped their knees while playing in the courtyard. She was skilled, patient, and warm with everyone she treated. Slowly, the staff began to trust her, though they still warned her, again and again, about the king's scar. Then one evening, everything changed. A messenger burst into the healing hall, breathless and pale. "The king has been injured. There was a fight near the northern border. He needs a healer right away." The other healers in the room froze. One of them, an older man named Torin, stepped back instead of forward. "Send Elara," he said quickly. "She is skilled. Let her go." Elara did not argue. She grabbed her bag of herbs, bandages, and tools, and followed the messenger through the palace halls, up a winding staircase, and into the king's private chamber. Draven sat on the edge of his bed, his shirt torn and stained with blood. His jaw was tight, and his eyes were sharp, watching her enter the room. Even injured, he looked powerful, like a mountain that refused to fall. "You are the new healer," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, my king," Elara answered, setting her bag down and kneeling beside him. "Let me see the wound." The injury was on his right shoulder, a deep cut from a blade. She worked quickly, cleaning it with practiced hands, her movements steady and sure. Draven watched her in silence, studying her face as she worked. She did not tremble. She did not look away. She simply focused on her task, the way she always did. As she finished bandaging the wound, her eyes moved, just for a moment, toward his left side, where his torn shirt revealed the edge of the old scar. She did not gasp. She did not flinch. She simply looked at it the way she looked at any injury, with quiet understanding. Then, without thinking too much about it, she asked softly, "Does it still hurt?" The room went silent. Draven froze completely. His breath caught in his throat. No one had asked him that question in over 10 years. Not his advisors, not his warriors, not even the members of his own pack. Everyone treated the scar like a secret too dangerous to mention, like a wound too deep to touch. But Elara had asked so simply, so gently, as if it were the most natural question in the world. For a long moment, he said nothing. His eyes stared at her, unreadable, and Elara wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. "Leave," he said finally, his voice low. Elara did not argue. She gathered her things and left the room quickly, her heart pounding. As she walked back through the halls, she was certain she had ruined everything. She expected to be dismissed by morning, just like the healer before her. But morning came, and no one told her to leave. Days passed, and Elara continued her work as if nothing had happened. She treated patients, organized her herbs, and avoided the king's private wing entirely. She assumed he wanted nothing more to do with her. Then, one night, a quiet knock came at her door. A young guard stood outside, his expression unreadable. "The king wishes to see you," he said, alone. Elara's heart raced as she followed him through the dark halls, up to the same chamber she had visited days before. Draven stood by the window, looking out over the moonlit courtyard. He turned when she entered, his expression calm but distant. "I have a small wound," he said, gesturing to his forearm, where a minor cut had not healed properly. "Treat it." Elara nodded and got to work, cleaning the wound in silence. She did not ask any questions this time. She simply focused on her task, letting the quiet settle between them. After a long while, Draven spoke, his voice quieter than before. "No one has asked me that question in 10 years, he said. Elara looked up but said nothing, giving him space to continue if he wished. "During the war," he said slowly, "there was someone I trusted completely, a friend, a warrior who fought beside me since we were young. During one of the final battles, he betrayed me. He turned against our pack, working with our enemies in secret. I did not know until it was too late. He was the one who gave me this scar." Elara's hands paused for a moment, but she did not interrupt. "I nearly died that night," Draven continued. "I lost more than blood. I lost my trust in almost everyone around me. Since then, I have kept people at a distance. Healers, advisors, even friends. I do not let anyone close enough to ask questions." "Why did you let me stay tonight?" Elara asked gently. Draven looked at her for a long moment. "Because you did not look at me with fear. You looked at me the way you would look at any patient. No pity, no fear, just understanding." From that night on, something between them began to shift, slowly and quietly. Draven started summoning her more often, not always for injuries, but sometimes simply to talk. Elara never pushed him to share more than he wanted. She listened when he spoke, and stayed silent when he needed silence. Over time, he told her more about the war, about the friend who had betrayed him, and about the years of loneliness that followed. Elara, in turn, shared pieces of her own life. She told him about her family, about the small village where she had grown up, and about her decision to become a healer after watching her own mother suffer from an illness no one could cure. Slowly, trust grew between them, built not on titles or power, but on honesty. The palace staff noticed the change as well. Draven seemed calmer, less guarded. He spoke more openly during meetings, and though he still carried his usual strength and authority, there was a new softness in the way he treated those around him. But not everyone was pleased with this change. Word of the shift in the king's behavior eventually reached the rival pack responsible for the betrayal years earlier. They had watched Ashvale from a distance, waiting for a moment of weakness. When they learned that the king had allowed someone close to him for the first time in a decade, they saw an opportunity. One evening, as Elara walked through the palace gardens alone, gathering herbs for her work, a group of strangers approached from the shadows. Before she could call for help, they took her, disappearing into the night. When Draven learned of her disappearance, something inside him broke loose. The careful control he had held onto for years shattered into pure determination. He gathered his warriors immediately, refusing to wait for morning. The rival pack had taken Elara to an old, abandoned outpost near the northern border, the same place where Draven had received his scar years before. They sent a message to the palace, demanding the king come alone if he wanted to see her again. Draven went, but he was not alone in spirit. His warriors followed at a distance, hidden among the trees, ready to act the moment he gave the signal. Inside the outpost, Elara was held in a small room, frightened but unharmed. When Draven arrived, the leader of the rival pack stepped forward, a cruel smile on his face. "You let your guard down," the leader said, "just like last time." Draven's eyes were steady. I am not the same man I was during the war. The rival pack attacked, but this time, Draven was not alone or unprepared. His warriors moved in from the shadows, and a fierce struggle broke out. Draven fought his way through the outpost, his focus entirely on reaching Elara. When he finally broke into the room where she was held, he found her safe, shaken but unharmed. He freed her quickly, and together, they made their way out as his warriors secured the outpost. The rival pack, outnumbered and outmatched, retreated into the night, their plan to weaken the king a complete failure. Back at the palace, as healers checked over Elara to make sure she was truly unharmed, Draven stood nearby, refusing to leave her side. For the first time, in front of his entire pack, he did not hide his concern. He did not mask his emotions behind a wall of quiet authority. He simply stayed close, his presence steady and protective. Later that night, once the palace had calmed and Elara had rested, Draven came to see her. He sat beside her bed, his expression open in a way she had never seen before. "You asked me once if it still hurt," he said quietly. "The truth is, it did, for a long time. Not just the scar, but everything connected to it. The betrayal, the loneliness, the fear of trusting anyone again." Elara reached out gently, her hand resting near his. "And now?" Draven looked at her, his eyes calm and certain. "Now, it feels different, lighter." From that day forward, the king's scar was no longer a secret, whispered about in fearful tones throughout the palace. Draven spoke of it openly when the moment called for it, not as a wound to hide, but as a part of his story. The healers who once feared the mark understood, for the first time, that it was simply a reminder of what he had survived. Elara remained by his side, not out of duty, but out of genuine care that had grown between them over time. The palace, once filled with quiet fear surrounding its king, slowly became a place of warmth and trust once more. And though Draven Cross would always carry the scar across his side, it no longer defined him the way it once had. It became, instead, a quiet symbol of survival, one he was finally ready to share with someone who had never once looked at him with fear.